introduction.
The French Revolution, one of the most important events in human history, believe it or not. I once had an instructor at LCCC who wanted me to read a French Revolution book that was like 800 pages by Thomas Carlyle. He was like, yeah, it's a really good book. I'm like, yeah. Never got to reading it, but maybe someday. But before we get to that, we have the lead up with French society, and it was split up into 3 estates, essentially 3 classes. Oh, okay, I didn't know that. That includes the first estate, which has the clergy, who are the wealthiest. This is the church. And France is a predominantly Catholic nation, opposite of England. It was predominantly a Protestant nation. So these guys are super devoted to Catholicism and the Pope. Underneath the first estate is the second estate, which is the nobility. Those who are not involved with the church, they have government jobs, and they as well are wealthy. So as long as you're working for the government, if you're not in the church, life's pretty all right for you. And then the third estate, which is everybody else. The middle, which wasn't really big in its all, and the lower classes. So the peasants, the normal people. Your bakers and all that stuff. However, as with revolutions, there are problems. And again, if I'm going too fast, just raise your hand and be like, hey, slow down. There are economic problems because there wouldn't be a revolution if everything was going okay. France was always involved with war. They had just gotten over the 7 Years' War, or the French and Indian War here in America, and then the American Revolution. While France was not directly involved with the American Revolution, it said in the video how their navies, and they supported us weapons, and they had their ships with us. So they were involved in that regard. They helped us out so we could win our independence. And when you have a lot of fighting, that needs, you have to spend a lot of money for ships, for troops, for sailors, for weapons. So the American Revolution is part of the reason why the French Revolution happened, because they were so super awesome and helped us out. And since there was war and deficit spending, which led to huge debt, that means there had to be a rise in taxes, because we have to pay for all these wars, and we have to pay for all the stuff that we're spending it on, because nothing is free. And inflation rose, and most people would spend a lot of their income, up to 80%, on just bread. Now most people, if you're not in the government or clergy, you're not eating the best of foods, you're eating the basics of food, like bread. And of course, since the government is run by royalty, and they're heavily involved in the church, the first 2 estates, the first estate, second estate, do not pay taxes. Because it's like helping your friends out. It's like, oh, yeah, I know that guy, he works for me. So, yeah, you don't have to pay taxes, don't worry about it. But we'll just tax everybody else who's in the third estate. So when a majority of the population, you give them most, if not all of the taxes, that can create some angst and some anger, which is part of the bell work question today. Because, I mean, if you're not paying taxes, that's great, you don't have to pay anything. But if you eliminate 2 classes, especially when they're wealthy, and you have to tax everybody else who's not making as much money, that can lead to some turmoil. Which led us to the storming of the Bastille. Fateful day. when 800 Parisians, basically an angry mob, marched outside the Bastille, which was a prison for political prisoners, and yeah, they were fired upon by the commander who was in charge because, okay, an angry mob is showing up. This is not good. And then it kind of backfired on him because all of this angry mob of Parisians broke inside and killed the commander and freed the prisoners because these political prisoners who spoke out against the crown, who spoke out against society, were in prison for it. And they spoke for this majority of people who have close to nothing. Give me some time to write that stuff down. Don't go on. This massive mob that came and killed the commander and freed the prisoners showed that the people were ready for change. They were tired of the status quo. And it is still a national holiday in France. It is their Independence Day, or at least the start of it. They have large parades and fireworks and stuff like we do. Because there is no French crown anymore. They're gone. Thank you. Oh, it's gonna be a thing. Aha! There's a painting. Look at it. All these people storming the Bastille. And there's their parade. That is the Arch of Peace in France, and yeah, again, it's their Independence Day, so they're having a good old time like we do here in the States. Yahoo! And it's July 14th. I think there's one more picture. Yes! This is how French society was spread so unequal. Again, you have the First Estate, which is at the very tippy top, who are living it well, because they're the clergy. Then you have the nobles and all the government employees who are living it good as well. And remember, these people, they don't pay taxes. So, excuse me, that's a big chunk out of the system. And then you have everybody else, who pay pretty much the rest. And notice 80% of the population are peasants, so they don't really have much money in the first place. So if they're taxed heavily and you don't have much money, after a while you're going to get tired of it. And then the official revolution begins with the Declaration of the Rights of Man. Yes. This was written by the National Assembly, which was just a governing body that was assembled. So basically what happened are the peasants and the normal folk got tired, and so they formed an assembly. And the Declaration of Rights of Man, sounds familiar, right? Declaration of Independence, the English Bill of Rights. They all use those two documents to help create this. And what it was just like, hey, men have rights, natural rights, as we discussed. As a human being, you have rights. And Thomas Jefferson actually helped influence it with his writings, and he helped give input on the idea. Because some people in America were like, yeah, look, the French Revolution, that's super cool and awesome. And other people were like, no, that's not super cool and awesome. Boom. Similar to the Declaration of Independence. In the video that we just watched, it had, I presume that was supposed to be George Washington say it, that all unalienable rights are equal, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And it includes the quote of life, liberty, security, with against resistance to oppression. Sounds super familiar. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Born and remain free and equal in rights. So it doesn't matter who you are and what you do. You are free and equal, whether you're a king or a pauper. Even though I don't even think they had paupers back then. Did you find the fact sheet? But we're not done yet. There was a women's march on Versailles. As we noted when we talked about the Sun King, Versailles is this super elegant palace that's still around today that held the king and queen. Because, I mean, it's basically the king and queen's White House times 500 probably. I've never been to Versailles, but it's pretty spectacular. However, women were upset because while the Declaration of Rights of Man implies that everyone's equal and free, women were not equal to men still. And they were still upset over the state of the economy because it wasn't improving. Even though all these things were going on, such as the storm of Bastille, these documents and assemblies were being created to show how society is going to change. Why is the random L? I don't know. Where? I don't know. They're supposed to be open. Yeah, there's a random L. So instead of upset, you can have a silent L in front of it for the first point. And they chanted bread because they wanted the king to do something because people are starving. The economy sucks. They're paying high taxes. They don't have a lot of money. There was a famous quote that was debunked by Antoinette, we'll get to soon. She didn't really say it, but a lot of people thought she did. Because people were hungry, they didn't have bread. So she said, let them eat cake. Oh, there it is, let them eat cake. And it's not like talking about the cake that you and I, even though I don't like cake. The cake that everyone else likes. Yeah, I know, I don't like cake. I forget what it's called. It's a special type of French bread that's more sweet. Starts with a P, I believe. It's like Poncien or something like that. So she didn't mean like a birthday cake. And in a dangerous situation, people are rioting, people are getting mad. King of France, King Louis, he tried to leave. Tried to get to the a royal castle from his friends from Austria that held. He didn't quite make it. And when your king of your own nation is trying to leave, not a good sign. So the people were not happy about that, King Louis. And he wasn't in the good graces of the country anyway, so he was on thin ice. And there's a lot of other things going on with King Louis. You see, during the French Revolution, everyone else in Europe is getting uneasy because, oh, France is having a revolution. Hopefully that doesn't happen in my country, because revolutions sometimes tend to spread. And since he was caught fleeing, he was seen as not supporting the revolution, because again, if your own leader is trying to leave the nation, it's not a good sign. To tie it to today, some people feared that President Maduro was going to do that. He asked England for some money that the country had stored over there. He's like, hey, I need some of this gold right now, please and thank you. And they're like, nah, we're not going to give it to you. Because a common tactic for world leaders, especially in the 20th century, is to take their riches and flee the country, because they know that if they stay, they might die. So, here, I'll... Thank you. And more radical revolutionaries were becoming influential. Oh, there's Marie Antoinette. Doesn't she look wonderful with her big hat and wig? But not all good things last forever, and the revolution turns even more bloody. I didn't plan that, Mr. Workman.
Yeah, buddy.
And the National Convention is established. This is just another assembly. Basically, what the revolution happened, especially in the early times of the late 1780s and 90s, is they would establish these conventions and these assemblies of groups of bodies, and one would replace the other. Because after a while, one was considered, oh, no, they're not good enough. They're not radical enough. And they voted to abolish the monarchy. Because King Louis, he's tried to leave. He obviously doesn't want to be here. He is not protesting his friends from Austria and other nations from invading, because a lot of times during this revolution, these other nations would send troops in to restore order, because these monarchs would be in it with each other through marriage or other relations, and they'd be like, yeah, we don't want them to lose their monarchy, because then people out here might want us to get rid of our monarchy. Like a chain reaction. And Louis was just like, yeah, they can invade the nation, who cares? However, the National Convention also extended suffrage to all male citizens, and suffrage is the right to vote. Notice the big thing here is sent out to all male citizens. Sorry, ladies. Bless you. King Louis is tried. He is found guilty, which is the next point. He's convicted by one vote. Because again, fleeing the nation doesn't look good. While he didn't openly say, yeah, I'm just going to let all these other countries invade my nation, he really wasn't detesting them, saying, yeah, I don't like them. 1793, he was sent to the guillotine. I'll show you guys a clip after the next slide. I think there's some more pictures. So he goes to the guillotine, says his final words, which I forget what they were. And yeah, he was beheaded. And they lifted his head to the crowd. And all the screaming patrons cheered. Because he was seen as a traitor. So it wasn't that big of a deal for him to be dead. And when you live in a system for so long that controls all of your life, and like for example, they finally got the right to vote, and you've been in a system where one man has basically controlled everything, not that it's good to see someone die, but it's kind of like the oppression is finally over. But it's not. Oh yeah, and Marie Antoinette, she was also executed later in October. She didn't get to escape free and happy. She wasn't very popular with the French Parisians as well. And the guillotine had an execution, or effective execution. It was fast. How many of you do not know what a guillotine is? Raise your hand. Okay, I had a feeling all of you would know what it is. Oh, wait, Brittany, you don't know? Okay, so I'll show a video, but what it is it's this giant wooden pillar with two sides, and it has a blade in the center of it, and it's controlled by a rope system, and the person who's the executioner either pulls down a lever or hits a button or something, and the blade comes screaming down to where your head is placed in the center of it, and it chops your head off. Originally, they devised it with a curved blade, but someone changed it to a sharp blade, and it also looks more menacing. When I was at a circus, when I was younger, that was one of the things, was the woman who was the assistant to the main magician, she put her head underneath the guillotine, you know how it's gonna go. They pull the thing down, head comes off, then I think a minute later, she walks behind the curtain. Because you saw her put her head in the thing, and like, oh wow, so obviously they didn't kill her in front of all these kids, but still, you still don't know how they did it. But it was effective because you didn't have to use guns or bullets, so you didn't have to waste precious ammunition. You didn't have to hold them in prison and feed them, even though they weren't being fed regularly. Again, it had a slanted blade. I'll show you guys a video, but up here real fast, even though you get in the corner, you might not be able to see. The blade was like that. But this led on to the Reign of Terror. Because again, fun's not over yet. And from 1793 to 1794, people were, if they did not support the revolution, many of them obviously were arrested. And then they were executed. Because if you don't support the revolution, it's treason. You support the crown, you support royalty, and that's unacceptable. Sorry for the typo. Oh, my bad. I thought there was one more. And then if you're finished for your ticket out the door, if you could fill out, name the three classes in France at the time, and who was in them. And then I'll show you the pictures in a second. Do that. Have you filled out your ticket out the door? No. Have you? Did you fill it out correctly? Give me a second. Give me a second. I'm surprised you're still going all about one round. Is anyone still writing?